Peace be upon you, everyone. Okay, we are coming back to continue what is cloud computing. This time, it's time to deploy our application on a cloud service provider. For that reason, we need to have a high overview of what is common between all the cloud service providers. In that case, you will have the ability to compare between them, then you will choose the best match for your application. We are going to start first of all by what is resources. Resources are divided into two sections. First one, a single resource, which we call it resource. A single resource is just instance of a service. You have a service, you have instance of that service, such a database or a server or whatever, what kind of service you have. That's called one resource to run your application. Resource group is a group of these resources together into one logical container that application will use to run. We are going to speak later about how much importance that resource group for the security of your application. So as a quick example, that kind of resources like database server or JDK or nodes or whatever. After that, you combine them into resource group. Then you send all this resource group into one logical container as a resource group. Okay, now we have our resources which we are going to deploy somewhere on the cloud. In that case, we call it geographical location because you need to deploy your application into somewhere. So that resources is going to be created into a region. This region or a geographical location around the globe that will contain the cloud data centers which you need to use. Like regions, for example, availability zone and region peers. We are going to speak about this in next slides. So let's jump into what is region. Region is a place, geographical location on the planet, where you are going to deploy your resources. It could be contained of one data center or multiple data center. It depends on the reason. All of them are connected with a low latency network that we call it a region. Region is very important because it gives you the flexibility to bring your application close to a user which you are targeting. For example, if you would like to target a user which are located in Russia, it will be much better to deploy your application into that geolocation region in like any place close to Russia, in Europe close to Europe, in Middle East close to Egypt, and something like this. It will be very useful for you. That's the reason of region. In that region, we have like availability zone. Availability zone also, it's very important because what if one of this data center is physically separated? That's availability zone. They are physically separated data center within one region, and we are using it in case if one of that if one of the zones are failed, you can use someone else to continue working and serving your users. They are connected using the private fiber optic network or depends on the cloud provider how they are connected these availability zones together. So your cloud provider is going to determine what is availability zone for it and what is the region for it, because sometimes there is a high overview term which are used, but internally each cloud provider sometimes are provided some differences of how they are implementing that kind of region or availability zone. After availability zone, what if something wrong happen, like a geographical location disaster? In case if one of all the geographical location went out, here the plan it will be depends on your cloud provider because each cloud provider has its own disaster plan, but at least all of them are sharing the same concept. If something went wrong, they should do something to prevent you from losing your running application at the moment. So that's a way to allow just the replication of your resources across a geographical in case of a global disaster, which who knows, it could happen. Okay, we deployed our application already. We're comparing them into resources. Now it's time to understand the security, which will lead us to what is resources management. Resources management, when you group all of your resources into one logical group, that will give you the ability to apply role-based or policies for access. Like, for example, you have a resource group of dev environment. So in that case, all the developers will have access. Anyone has the role of developer, he will have access to that group. The same also if for testers, the same for a real life application. So you collect all the resources group into a logical container, then you control the access to these containers by yourself. So you can access the group specific like department or user, it's up to you how you can do that. Accessing your resources over internet or firmware. This accessing, like each provider has its own way. For example, someone like with identity or whatever that for security, they will give you the access. But now you want to access your resources, you can use the portal user interface from that cloud provider. You can use the provider command line interface in some situation. PowerShell, all of them like into this portal UI. You can use REST API to connect with your resources over the internet or depends. Okay, cloud providers, like few of them will be like Google Cloud Provider, Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Service, Oracle Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, IBM Cloud, and more and more and more. Cloud providers are not just this which you can see now on the screen. No, they are more than that. So, but all of them are sharing most of the common concepts which we have explained in that series of what is cloud computing. So that is the end of that series. I hope that I was able to highlight what is the common concepts between all the cloud providers. Now it's up to you to choose what cloud provider it will be fit for your application. Depends on the comparison of the high overview concepts. Now you know the concepts which between all of them. Now all what you need to do, just compare what would you like to choose, so you can decide what kind of service you would like to use from that cloud provider. And I will thank you so much for listening to my episodes and for watching. If you like it and you think it's useful for everyone, so please like it, share it, comment, subscribe. It depends how you can see it. And I wish you happy coding and see you next time. If I came across some common concepts of the cloud, I will continue like add it on that playlist. So happy coding, see you next time. Peace be upon you all.